Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. This week I have the pleasure of being joined by Janardan Dalmia, the founder and CEO of Trukkin. JD is an experienced finance professional involved in investing and organizing capital raising for private equity and venture capital. He's a wealth of experience across New York and London as well.
New York and Dubai predominantly.
Dubai as well, yeah. So spent 10 years working in wealth management, investment banking firms like Barclays. JD realized that there is a transportation shift and that the industry in the Middle East was still waiting for their industry 4.0 moment, and we'll talk about what that is. So in 2017 he founded Trukkin, which is a technology-driven enablement platform that is revolutionizing the transport industry in the Middle East and Pakistan. So we'll talk about those markets. On the show today, we'll talk about the idea, how to move careers from investment banking into a startup, and then about the trends in logistics and transport as well. Welcome, JD.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for
Thanks for
having
coming
me.
in, and glad to be back in the studio.
Thank you for having me again.
So how did Trukkin start?
So Trukkin really started. There was as with all the startups, there was a moment when the idea was incubated, and if I were to remember back, this was back in 2015. I was traveling to Saudi, and I was in a large, I was in a room with the CEO of a fairly large public company, and we started discussing about, logistical requirement for his own company. And while discussing, he was talking about the pain points that he was facing with the legacy transporters, right? And at the same time, there were multiple startups which were emerging across the globe, from India to US, who were trying to revolutionize how long haul road transport movements are done in an asset light model. There were a lot of things which we had learned from Ubers and Kareems of the world, right? In terms of what is sharing economy, what is on demand, how to build business asset light, and focusing on service. And that's really where the idea was kind of, the spark had happened. And then when I started looking and digging more into the industry, then one thing led to the other, and finally Trukkin was born.
Okay, so as the description mentioned, enablement platforms. So you're not necessarily building trucks, you're building a platform to enable legit companies connect with drivers and other?
Yeah, that is correct. I think, usually you would see in startups, people go after disrupting a certain kind of sector and industry. And this is one thing which I always say: we are not a disruptor, we are an enabler. We are not here to disrupt anyone's business, but rather, making it more efficient by enabling certain things. How shippers, send their request regarding, sending their shipments. How do they load, right? Equally on the transportation side, how do these guys find jobs? How do they execute it? How do they get paid? So we are enabling a highly fragmented and disorganized market which already existed out there.
Okay, we'll talk about the kind of industry where it was and where it's going as well. But so how has Trukkin gone? So idea to founding in 2017. How did you put together the team? How did you go around the business plan, and how's it gone so far?
So with any startup, look, the day one, any founder, when he dreams about a startup, you think overnight it'll be a major success, etc. And and then the reality sets in. That to build any business, it's a really daunting task. But we are fortunate that we started our business in mid 2017 from UAE, and subsequently we launched our business in Saudi in a few months' time, and both the countries we call as our home markets.
So at the end of 2017, you launched in Saudi, similar
Yes,
time
so
to UAE.
we were already in Saudi by that time.
Yeah, that's a good time given the kind of opening up of the market as
Absolutely, and I think Saudi and UAE predominantly, have the major lion's share of the business in the GCC. So anyone who does, well within UAE and Saudi can go and pretty much capture the rest of the GCC and beyond.
Yeah.
So that was the idea.
So you opened as in you were building the platform, or you actually had customers from the end of 2017?
We actually had customers. So when we say we were present, means we were physically present, that we were servicing the clients from both the geographies.
Yeah.
And then servicing the clients to almost 10 to 12 countries now. You know, the trucks kind of go to almost 10, 12 countries. So that's how we started back in 2017. Yeah.
Okay. And how's it gone from there?
So far, so good. I think, with any startup, it goes through a certain evolutionary phase.
Yeah.
You had asked about how do we build the team. And look, building the right team is always the most challenging part of any business. Finding the like-minded people who believe in a contrarian truth and then kind of, provide that support is always very challenging. But I think it's a matter of luck, and it's also a matter of instilling the right culture in the team or in the organization, because you can hire the first 10, and the first 10 then goes and hire the next 20, right? And so we have been very particular in terms of how we choose our team members who join, and follow certain philosophies in terms of hire slow and fire fast. But the main thing is we don't look for people kind of to use and abuse in a way. For us, anyone who joins our company becomes the part of our Trukkin family.
Yeah.
And we truly invest time, energy with them, and we value their experience which they bring on their table, which could be completely from a different field. So we have been fortunate in terms of finding the right set of people who have been there throughout this journey and taking it forward.
Interesting. You mentioned the trucks. Do you have a fleet of trucks, or is it a SaaS product and a platform?
So we are an aggregator, which means we are an asset-light model where we don't own any of the assets. But what we do is, in the market, almost 75 to 80% of the transportation market comprises of highly fragmented, disorganized, small number of fleet owners, the guys who own 1 truck, 2 truck, 3 trucks. These are the guys who have come from whether India or Pakistan, and they have been working very hard here. They eat what they kill, right, at the end of the month. And these guys were historically always dependent on multiple layers of middlemen. And they did not have a lot of efficiency, they could not provide the service levels which you need to provide to service an institutionalized company or a corporate, right? And that's where we come in and we fill in that gap. That we enable those guys to work directly through us, service the company, and while providing the whole 24/7 institutionalized service which a corporate demands.
Okay, so explain to me the analogy of the story of the CEO. I'm the CEO of a big listed company. It's retail, it's manufacturing or whatever, and I have a lot of transport requirements. What's my procurement decision process, and at what point do I sign off a budget to use Trukkin?
So historically, if you're CEO of a large retail company, you have been dependent on asset owners, right? And whether the market has gone through several kind of fluctuations, whether you have not benefited from those fluctuations, and you have always been dependent on certain legacy transporters who have not really cared about improvising the service levels to the modern standard, with the not infusing really the technology. So the way things have been operating within your own organization would have been pretty archaic way. And similarly, the transporters who have been providing the service, they themselves haven't found that efficiency in terms of, let's say, backloads and efficiency in terms of optimizing several things which you can with the help of technology. So our proposition is very simple. We are not here to dismantle or create an issue for you in terms of your service. but rather what we are there to do is so that you can focus on your product, let the logistics be taken care by us. So we do not have the vendor mindset, we have the partner mindset, right? We want to study in depth about what your requirements are,
Yeah.
and how best can we service that with the help of several transporters which are out there in the
Yeah.
market, right?
Okay.
So rather than being dependent on one or two or three, we can open up the whole supply side of hundreds of transporters, right?
Yeah.
And one could be very good at providing certain thing, while the other could be very good at providing certain things. So thereby we come and digitize your process
Yeah.
by taking care of, logistics is seamless. So that's kind of our headache. And at the same time, we provide a value add for the transporters, so that when they go from point A to point B, we are able to provide them the back load, etc., etc.
And how the technology, how does that work?
So look, technology is an evolving, solution. And with the help of technology, what happens, for example, for a company, you get transparency, you get efficiency, you are able to make data-driven decisions, right? Which was kind of lacking in the background. So, simple things from the tracking and, digitizing, going paperless in many ways, and having a real-time update at the flick of a button, whether it's your app or, or sitting on a web platform. So all those things kind of help a lot from the company's perspective, and similarly from the transporter's perspective.
Yeah. So are people working with Trukkin in terms of, are they licensing, is it a SaaS model, or are they, it's a managed services?
No, so far there is no SaaS model for
Okay.
us. We do not charge any of our clients to use our systems.
Yeah.
We provide them this as a solution,
Yeah.
so that they can adopt into the new way of doing things.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. So do you have to have a relationship with all the different vendors, with all the different logistics providers? And can you just describe, for people who don't understand the industry well, you mentioned the kind of one-man shop sort of man with a van sort of thing, but there's fleet management companies, there's lots of different providers, there's well-known names. Like I've heard a lot of things lately about, we talk about last mile delivery, but we also talk about big e-commerce companies partnering with national postal services, different types of logistics providers, and then there's the international ones like UPS and etc. What's the kind of landscape, and who do you work with?
So think of it as, we are not the last mile company, right? We focus on the first mile or the mid mile or the second mile, however you want to call it. So these are,
the distance of the journey. Yeah.
Yeah. So we focus on intercity, intracity. Here you can call countries, right? Because it's such a unique landscape, Middle East. Because at the same time you're dealing with like so many different countries, right? So whenever someone is trying to send, so our customers are corporates. We deal in B2B business, where a factory is producing goods, and those goods need to be shipped to a another factory or a warehouse or a distribution or retail, wherever it needs to go.
Yeah.
Whether in the country or outside the country. Absolutely. Yeah. So these are recurring, high volume, large customers who have a significant requirement of moving cargo. High valuable cargo.
Yeah.
And that's where we focus on. When you look at the landscape has, either you are a fleet owner, and the fleet owner could be a large, medium, small fleet owner, depending on the number of assets you own. And then there are who we call independent truck drivers, which dominates the majority of the market, who, as I was mentioning, have been historically dependent on middlemen, in terms of providing them with jobs and those things. But as an individual, one can only provide a certain level of they cannot provide the institutionalized support, which is what the corporates need. So there was a clear gap in the market, right? So this is where Trukkin comes in, and to the corporate, they get the assurance of a proper institution serving them in terms of taking care of the transportation needs. And the same comfort is provided then to the independent truck drivers or the fleet owners. So we work a lot with fleet owners as well, the guys who own a lot of trucks or have number of assets. To them, we are another marketing channel we increased the asset utilization for a lot of them in terms of providing the loads from a particular point or back loads, etc.
Okay, interesting. So talking about kind of starting the company again and your career, how does the career in investment banking help this? And are you involved in the finance, and how does that help?
So I get this a lot, like so investment banking was a very different career, and then coming into startup is a very different two completely different industries and sectors. I think, look, any kind of experience which you build over time is always helpful, right? And I give a lot of my credit to whatever I'm doing to the experience that I had gathered doing M&A or investment banking over the last, for over 10 years in New York and in Dubai. But those are things which you kind of connect back in dots, right? What banking taught me is in terms of how, an idea or a business can be scaled, how large you can build it, right? And how you can drive a shareholder value around it, and while servicing, all the stakeholders inside it. So there are a lot of small things which you kind of pick up and you learn, and that definitely helps in terms of your own understanding of how to build the business, how the corporate finance works behind the business. And I think, I appreciate the experience which I gathered. Yeah.
I think that's a really good example, because often we talk about startups as kind of venture and different types of investment, but what's made the world go round, money makes the world go round, but is corporate finance and structuring capital to help businesses grow. So you would have had a real insight across different industries. Why choose the transportation and logistics industry?
And that's a great question. And I think this is where the investment banking experience really helped me, because, while I was, thinking through this opportunity, the idea was going into this was really understanding how big this business can become in the future, right? And it all started from understanding, what the market size of this sector is. It's a $50 billion market, between Middle East and Pakistan, the areas where we operate, GCC and Pakistan, $50 billion.
Okay.
So
that's logistics. That's not freight. That's just on ground trucks.
Yeah, there's
transport.
A huge. Logistics comprises of a few things, but even from the road transport sector, it's like it's like multi-billion-dollar market, right? Okay. It's almost close to 50. Even if you just look at the road transport market within GCC and Pakistan. Okay. So that's where the finance skills kind of come in, and you start back calculating. Or you take the top-down approach that, okay, what's the market size available? What are the players in the business? What kind of, landscape there is, the room for you to play, and how big you can scale it to. Yeah. So the scaling and, the size of the market, the need of the market, kind of all those things, banking teaches you to kind of look into what matters, right?
Yeah. Was there another industry or an idea that came close? Like, you're in the, obviously people talk about the banks being disrupted, and there's a lot of kind of innovation in fintech. Was that something that appealed to you?
Look, fintech definitely is a very interesting sector, which has been, making a lot of noise over the last many years. But personally, I never kind of went into fintech. Even this logistics happened by chance. It was not that one day I decided that, I want to leave banking and I want to do this. Yeah. It was more when I came across the idea, and when I saw the different dynamics around the sector, and it was pretty clear that there is going to be a big revolution coming around in the logistics sector, and if I don't do it, someone will do it anyways, right? So it was more like I got sucked into it the more and more I researched about the sector. Yeah. And, obviously then it was that, look, it's now or never, because, with every passing year, the opportunity cost to move into doing something else kind of increases, right? Yeah. So for us, I just got sucked into it. I was super excited about the idea. And, I decided to, take a plunge.
Cool. So when you started, did you raise funds at the start?
So initially we did our own investment. Yeah. We brought in some initial backers in terms of angel investors. Also, there's a public company in Saudi, Batek which is one of our backers.
What industry are they in?
They're also in logistics industry.
Okay.
They're a holding company which owns multiple assets.
Yeah.
Then last year we brought in we did a small fundraising. We brought in certain investors into our round, and then we will look to do it sometime soon again.
So you've done kind of angel and seed, and you'd look to do a Series A.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Cool. And of that kind of market, are you going for a particular chunk of it? Is there a particular space where you think the opportunity is?
The beauty of our business is that it's quite flexible. In terms of we are able to. So in last 3 years of our journey, we have served over maybe a couple of hundreds of corporates. We have moved everything from chicken to houses you can think of across any kind of vehicle, whether it's a flatbed or a box truck or a curtain-sided truck.
They're actually moving physical houses in China lately.
So there are companies which make modular and
prefab,
prefabricated stuff. So we have moved everything on kind of every kind of vehicle, over 200 locations, if you pick the locations within the Middle East. So our journey has been, we have gotten a lot of experience in terms of moving any kind of product across any kind of vehicle. And we wanted to then translate it to, take that experience and, launch in Pakistan as well, which we did, a few months back.
Yeah. So actually we'll talk about that. So Pakistan, you choose there outside of the kind of GCC as a next market. You could have chosen other places. India is relatively bigger than Pakistan in terms of market opportunity. There's also North Africa. There's also other places in Levant. Why Pakistan?
So you're absolutely right. In India, we could have gone to India as well. But India already has like over 200 startups doing this. And, 50 of them have become, really tried, and 20 of them have become really big. And Pakistan is something where we saw the market was very wide open.
Okay.
I think culturally both India and Pakistan are very similar in terms of at the ground level what we do here. And
culturally and kind of industry setup.
The way industry is set up, the way the guys who are driving the trucks, mostly these are the same people who are coming from India and Pakistan. So Pakistan, I was just kind of following the market for the last year. And it's something we are very confident in terms of capturing an immense part of the market share there and creating a real pan Pakistan logistic operations. So it was more of a leap of faith. And during the middle of the pandemic, we went and launched it.
Oh, so you only recently launched?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you launch in Pakistan? I assume you couldn't travel.
Yeah, so look, this is where the digitization and technology have really opened our, eyes and accelerated certain things which we all believe in, right? In terms of the connectivity with people, and our teams worked really efficiently. We took some very smart steps, and in the hindsight, a lot of things we did was were like perfect in terms of how we ended up launching it. So we launched in Karachi, we launched in Lahore. We have other 3 offices which are opening up this week in Faisalabad, Multan, some of the other places. We are connecting all the dry ports, etc. All the regular ports, industrial areas.
Amazing.
We have a strong team there. So things
like
kind of went out very well. Yeah,
that sounds like a kind of an all-in kind of
absolutely
3, 4, 5 offices in a few months.
Wherever we expand to, whether we are present in UAE or whether we are present in Saudi or whether we are present in Pakistan, I consider all 3 of them as our home markets. I don't see that one country is our home market and the rest is expansion now. So our thesis is operate locally, connect globally. Right. So wherever we operate, we are truly in that market.
Interesting. So I was going to ask about investment. So the chunk of investment would go on sort of market setup on the ground. That's what you would invest in.
The investment would go in, obviously the technology, the setup, hiring the right talent, and the rest of the stuff in terms of building the infrastructure around it to be able to provide the service to our clients.
Okay, so basically, in the kind of transport sector, we often think of the kind of big global companies that are disrupting, say Tesla and Elon Musk launched something that was like a truck. maybe you will have something that looks like that. But we also hear of the trends like automated driving. I think that company Nikola, is that their name? They got in a little bit of a spot of bother when they launched a video on YouTube showing the truck driving itself. Yet it was fake because the technology couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, but I think what I'm getting at is like, are Tesla well placed to do what you're doing, or is it more of an Uber and a Careem in terms of enabler? And then secondly, like, where are we on trends like automation?
So I wouldn't think like, Tesla and us would like cross paths in terms of what we do, because Tesla is more into building the next generation of vehicles, right? Which is kind of moving from the old school of fuel to the battery operated vehicles. So yes, they might come up with, they might build a great truck which might run on the battery, which might be far more efficient, right? But I just think that's still going to be more on the passenger side, on the consumer side, rather than on the commercial logistics side at the moment.
But do you think that because their valuation is quite high, and companies who are that big like Google, they kind of find a way of creating a SaaS product and services and getting into other spaces?
Yeah, but still, I think Tesla's focus would be, again, I wouldn't be able to comment, but it'll be more consumer driven, because they have a lot of market to be captured there.
Okay.
In terms of trucking, even if they build a great truck, that's all great for us, because we are not in the building of building the truck, right? We are in the business of providing the transportation service, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of whether autonomous vehicles, when it would come, what would happen around the commercial logistics space, which I frankly think on the commercial side it's like many years to go. But even if it comes, that doesn't dismantle or disrupt or do anything to our business. Our business is creating more about load efficiencies, the providing the jobs to the truck drivers, making sure the customers are able to get the right price for their shipments, able to send their shipments much more efficiently.
So let's talk about that angle of it then. There's Uber and Lyft, and there's Careem in this region, and maybe they will be in the B2B space potentially. Do you have a platform that gives drivers jobs, as you said, and in that regard, how does that work? Is that sort of in the same way that a taxi driver would be?
So Uber already has something called Uber Freight, which is kind of similar to what we do. Yes, so we have all the platforms where the driver can have an application, but more than application, we enable drivers in many other ways, right? In terms of whatever that comfort level is. Yes, so we do provide, but what drivers need, or what the transporters need, is really, or the customers also need, is really the understanding of on the ground operations, right? And if you look at Uber versus Careem back in the day, that's where Careem really added value, from my understanding, that they really knew how to operate locally. They connected very well with the local audience, what their requirement was, and serving their needs, right? While Uber was kind of building at the global level. And I think it's a similar effort for us in terms of what Uber Freight is doing, is still more on the West at the moment, versus what we are doing is really capturing the essence on the ground, right? What do the companies need in Pakistan on the ground? What do the truck drivers need on the ground? What do people need? The guy who's driving in Riyadh or in Jeddah or in Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Ras Al Khaimah. We are connecting with people on the ground, understanding their pain points and solving their pain points, right? So I think that's where we add value.
And is this something that they can do with you plus their existing clientele? It's not exclusive. It doesn't need to be.
It's not exclusive, but they prefer to work through us once they get the taste of working with us, and they realize it's far more easier to operate through us versus going and finding a job themselves.
Is it easier? So there's you might be aware of the Prop 22, a Californian law recently, where there was a referendum about whether the drivers were employees or not, and the benefits that would be provided. That hasn't come up much in this region. However, there is a question mark over if I'm working for you with Trukkin or with Uber Freight, that they don't provide health benefits and it's not my company. How do you kind of tackle that one?
So look, we haven't faced any of those things as of now because it's not exclusive. So someone who's not exclusive with us, he is free to work with anyone or do his things independently as well, right? So those things we haven't faced.
But would you look to provide different benefits for your partners?
Absolutely, we would absolutely, even without a government-driven regulation, we would always be very keen on finding ways on how we can support the ecosystem of transporters, right? Whether that means from their health checkups to their welfare, to build, how do they eat, how do they live, and how do they travel, and where do they rest. So this is all part of the ecosystem, which we would look to kind of add value to. So whether that's a government driven or not, that's definitely an area which we want to focus on.
So sort of empower them to kind of generate more business and increase their value and their livelihoods. Interesting. So can you explain, we mentioned it at the top, Transportation 4.0, just a little bit about that?
Look, Transportation 4.0 for me is really about, creating that efficiency and transparency in the business. From the customer perspective, having access to all their logistical requirements or visibility, at real time is kind of Transportation 4.0.
Okay.
The ability to make decisions based on data, real time data, is something where you would add value on the shipper side. On the transporter side is the same thing. 4.0 is increasing their asset utilization, maximizing the returns on the investment of their own asset, right? Creating that one extra efficiency layer for them, how they have been operating. All this while, again, being able to do that in a very user-friendly manner with the help of technology. I think that is a 4.0 moment for me.
Interesting. How do you think, from being on the inside of this, the kind of innovations in transport logistics and the digital transformation that's been accelerated this year is changing companies' kind of business decisions around warehouses and stock and things like that? Is there a shift happening?
Absolutely. I think, especially in times like COVID, and when the economy goes through such a severe stress test, right? Then the companies have to almost dig deeper to find that extra layer of cost saving from where they can bring in. Whether that means not stocking up in terms of your raw materials or inventory, and have the true just-in-time inventory module. And so that's where we kind of come in, right? Instead of, so they don't need to pre-plan, way in advance. Someone could keep pretty much their business in a very variable mode, right? And really, based on the demand and supply of the economy, you can readjust or increase or decrease your production capacities, right? And that's where the true, an efficient logistics system kind of comes in.
Because going a little bit more into the COVID, like I think, and you might have better stories, but there was examples of companies who logistics was one of the issues at the start. Can we move things around fast? Do we have the right stock? And then other companies were left with a ton of stock. Like I think some of the kind of duty-free establishments have just loads of stock that they don't know what to do with it. And then you've got other ones that almost don't want to take in the orders because they just can't fulfill them. And there's border issues, there's delays, there's things like that. How do you think that's planned out? And are we still facing a lot of those problems?
So look, I think there were certain sectors who were obviously hit very hard, right? For example, duty free, etc., which there's no one could do anything about it if the passenger traffic pretty much came down to zero. But I'll give you a great example of what we did in one of the cases where customers were unable to send their products because of the certain border restrictions. Because we are present in multiple geographies, we were able to kind of do reverse logistics. So instead of initiating the movement from UAE to Saudi and back and forth, we were able to originate the trucks from Saudi coming to UAE and then taking the backload, the products of some of our other customers into Saudi. So those are the benefits which a smart, efficient logistics system kind of brings into the market.
Yeah, interesting. So there is sort of a kind of synergies there,
Absolutely,
and collaboration and partnerships. That's kind of a macro trend around technology and data,
Yes.
isn't it? Being able to kind of
technology, as I was saying, it's always has to be an enabler, right? It cannot be a disruptor into anyone's business unless you are building something which kind of goes and adds value to their to the any of the stakeholders who are involved in that equation. Till then, you're not really unless you do that, then you're not adding the value.
Okay, sticking with the COVID theme and looking to the future, what would your sort of how would you describe a perfect scenario for the rollout of a vaccine from a transport logistics point of view?
Well, I think obviously the distribution of vaccine will be an immense logistic challenge, right? Because the things which we are reading about that certain vaccines might require a certain kind of temperature to be moved in,
or different things,
certain kind of life of that vaccine. And secondly, think about it, if there are multiple doses and there are 8 billion people, that means 16 billion doses need to be distributed to the remotest part of the countries, right? And in a very controlled manner, right? So it's going to be a massive challenge which would truly show how technology would support and how people will have to come and collaborate, how several companies will have to collaborate and really work in a very synchronized manner in terms of providing that service. It's absolutely a very daunting task, but I think pretty much all the companies are kind of gearing up for that challenge.
Yeah, and in what way are they looking at how they normally transport medical supplies? Are they looking at different types of? Are they sharing freight? Are they sharing logistics services and things like that?
I think there will be specific vehicles which will be prepared because this will be a multimodal transport, right? Requirement, because where the vaccines would be manufactured and then land transported, then airship, then again warehouse, and then again transported in smaller vehicles to the remote part. So it would require a lot of synchronization, and people will have to kind of build all sorts of things, whether it's a refrigerated facility to refrigerated they will have to invest in very specific refrigerated vehicles who are meeting certain standards of Food and Drug Administrations of each country. So it would be a lot of time, energy, and investment into these resources to get this thing done right.
Interesting. It'll be fascinating to follow.
It will be, absolutely.
Yeah, and hopefully it will go well. So just lastly, some other trends around smart mobility. What else do you see happening outside of kind of B2B? Like, where are we at the moment? So we're coming to the end of the year. It's nearly December.
I think smart mobility itself is going through a very interesting evolution, right? I mean, smart mobility to us is kind of moving around in cool ways, right? Whether we see scooters or electric scooters,
Definitely.
and those hoverboards or segways or whatever, right? Pretty much anything which moves, which is truly like providing the hyper local mobility, right? And I think when we see what's happening in major metropolitan cities around the world, this thing is really catching up. And I think it's this is here to stay, because it definitely adds a lot of value for short distances in local communities where you need to travel, all the way from once you step out of a metro station, and if you need to reach to your office, or going back to your home, or kind of hanging out in your own community. So these things are going to add value. So I'm myself very curious and inquisitive about how this will shape up.
Yeah, and it is related to your space as well, because a lot of the regulation that's put in place in the UAE and KSA particularly, that allows these companies in and to follow, is kind of good for it kind of sets the scene for what you're trying to do.
I wouldn't say we both are kind of associated in terms of regulation, because we operate in a very completely two different sectors. But yes, I mean the great thing is the RTA here, etc., have been they follow and they look into regulations very
Yeah.
deeply before launching something.
Yeah.
So I think they have already done that now that many of those new brands which we see out in the on the streets,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting.
I mean KSA again, I think is an interesting space. Big cities, a lot of population. But we'll have to see how this evolves because the distances are far longer.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of the hyper local mobility will take off there, but I'm pretty sure there'll be an interesting observation in the next few months.
Interesting. Yeah, and the other developments that are coming up in KSA.
Yeah.
So JD, you're a founder of an early stage startup in the Middle East with a focus on growing across the region. You're obviously optimistic and bullish that this emerging market will emerge. What would your pitch be to investors from outside the region to believe in the region, believe in your company, and your advice as well for wannabe startups?
So I think from the Middle East point of view, you have to look at the demographics. You have to look at the how fast the government here kind of leads in terms of innovation, right? And how supportive they are in terms of really when we talk about smart economy, digitization, etc. So it's a very government driven support system, right?
Okay.
Where they kind of encourage you to kind of go and do experiment things. It's a great unique landscape in the sense that you are not only serving one country, but in Middle East you are almost serving close to 10, 12 countries, right? So the market space is really large, right? So you have a lot of consumers, you have a lot of businesses, you have a huge landscape, and the ability to service that is amazing, right? And the region is ripe for disruption, or as they say, in terms of evolution of the technologies. So I'm very excited about the space, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, you were asking.
No, sorry. I just wanted to clarify on that point. Is that because of language or proximity, or because there isn't a common trading agreement, or
There is not a common trading, but still the things work very seamless, right?
Okay.
Because it's almost like United States of GCC or the United States of Middle East in terms of how everyone kind of works, right, seamlessly with each other.
Okay.
So there's things kind of work very seamless. People are countries understand that how they are dependent on each other, and there is a big support system around that.
It's a good observation.
In terms of your advice on wannabe startups, I think or founders, I think, look, if you do your research very well, don't wait for that perfect time or the perfect product to launch the business, because as always, it will never go according to your plan day one, right? So make an MVP and test the market, get into the market. It's really when you roll up your sleeves, when you are into the market, you start really getting the feel, and you get punched on the face, and then you evolve. Do not be shy from pivoting. Smart teams evolve fast. Hire the right team, build the right culture, and as a founder, be mentally strong. I think mentally strong is a very important trait, which is almost like grit, right?
Okay.
Because in this journey, no one's going to come and motivate you on a daily basis. So you have to self-motivate yourself, right? So, that would be just a quick advice.
That was good advice. I think a lot of people identify with it in other sectors other than transport. I was going to finish, but it's just very interesting. So when you're building a company like this and you're speaking to investors, obviously there's exits, but do you think we saw something recently from NASDAQ in Dubai that you can list here with lower valuations? Do you think that that's a kind of a trend that will come, and will we see an ecosystem around that?
Yeah, so creating a bourse for SMEs, I think definitely an interesting, in the right direction, what the country is trying to do, or the government is trying to do. See, any form of platforms through which companies or startups or SMEs are able to raise capital in any form is only going to help the ecosystem, and is only going to motivate and encourage more entrepreneurs to go out and do something, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing something and doing it well, and if the market believes in your company, I mean, that's a great, shot of, faith or encouragement for a company. So I think these are absolutely the right direction.
Yeah. I was going to say a vaccine shot, but no, not necessarily, but maybe, So it's a good boost.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, JD. Looking forward to keep on trucking. It's a bad joke, but looking forward to following the Trukkin story. It's a cool name, it's a cool company, and you're a positive, energetic guy. So I'm sure you'll have great success.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.